Laws to tame accidents. That's a big headline, and it's stemming from the road accidents we've seen this week. That's the front page of the Standard. On the Daily Nation,
killer roads claim 25 lives, still on the same matters.
Okay.
The whole twist of bringing NTSA back on highways.
It is the biggest conversation today and throughout this week. Do we have another daily? Yes, bankruptcy. Jumwa faces 60 million shilling suit, and look at that house. Wow.
Yes. This does actually painted the whole picture of how
interesting
insets of the house look like.
A different story altogether on the Star.
People Daily, back to the whole conversation, the return of road carnage, and more statistics. We'll be taking a look at that on different dailies. We also say top 10 things Kenyan women love.
Oh
yes.
Okay. Oh, yes. They love a lot of things. Any other daily? We have Taifa Leo, pepo wa mauti, masuala ya ajali za barabarani. Zaidi ya watu 20 wapoteza maisha. Ni habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo.
Moving on Business Daily, away from matters, road carnage revealed KCB Group Inc.'s deal to sell the National Bank. And deal with the Nigerian lender, giving you more details and context on that later on.
All right, I thought we'd be looking at highlights from across the borders, but anyway. Oh yes, we do have the new vision in Uganda, over 12,000 schools to be renovated. Matters Education headlining in Uganda. Do we have the Monitor?
The Monitor matters dogs, and they say experts weigh in after dog kills baby.
And you know what they're saying about this?
Oh yes.
Heat waves make dogs more aggressive.
I know.
And this is actually a research by Harvard University.
Oh, yes.
And remember what you said about the heat wave in Kenya?
Yes.
The counties will be facing
more than
30 degrees.
More than 30 degrees Celsius.
Stay away from dogs.
Oh, yes.
That's in Uganda. What about Tanzania?
It reminds me how they say men are dogs. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. In Tanzania, why the Bank of Tanzania has scaled down forex market involvement. That is in The Citizen. And finally,
kwenye jarida la Mwananchi, sekta binafsi kuokoa jahazi, maswala ya biashara kule Bongo yakipewa kipaumbele kwenye gazeti la Mwananchi. And those are the dailies this morning. We'll be looking at some of these a bit extensively in a short while. But first, what do you have for us, Stanley?
I'll be taking a look at the weather as well as the traffic in a few.
If dogs are going to bite us.
Oh yes, on the whole screen. Just what to expect. But key, the news diary today, the whole deal with the doctors in KMPDU. They're expecting something, but the strike continues.
Oh wow.
The strike continues.
Today should be the 7th day.
Yes.
So it's about a week now?
A week now, yes.
Okay.
Oh yes.
All right. So we'll be taking a look at the diary later today. But before that, now let's delve into the papers. Right, on the Standard, too little, too late. New laws to tame accidents. That's a big headline. And it is the biggest discussion today throughout this week following that accident on Monday. Gone too soon, Kenyatta University suspends lectures for 3 days to mourn 11 students who died in an accident on the day Transport CS announced tough measures to rein in road carnage, including bringing back NTSA to highways. That story is on page 2 of the Standard. And they have an image there of an injured Kenyatta University student being received in Nairobi after being airlifted from Voi yesterday. The other big story given prominence on the front page of the Standard, of course, is that signing of the affordable housing bill into law yesterday. And the headline reads, shot in the arm for Ruto's pet project. Yesterday, he assented to the affordable housing bill, paving way for the deduction of the housing levy and construction of the houses across the country. Now, 1.5%, this is what salaried employees will pay from their gross pay, an amount that will be matched by the employer. And that begins end of this month. More figures on the front page, 20,000 shillings, social housing for anyone below 20,000 shillings monthly, and affordable middle-class housing for those earning more than 140,000 shillings monthly. And you can get more details about this new law, the Affordable Housing Act. Now, it is an act on pages 4 and 5 of the Standard. And the highlights on the front page, Shakahola families to get victims' bodies. Finally, families whose loved ones perished in the Shakahola massacre will have to wait for at least 1 week to collect the bodies. It emerged only 30 out of the 429 were identified through DNA tests. And you know, we always forget just how many people died in this Shakahola massacre. 429, and yet they're still discovering more bodies in that area. So the numbers could go high. Anyway, other news, governors feel heat as leaders plot 2027 polls. County bosses are having a rough time from opponents who want to take a stab at the seat in the future. That story is on page 10 of the Standard. Let's go to the top strip now, where I have more highlights. Law state used to harass dissenters rendered illegal. Dissenting voices.
Oh, yes. Actually, according to the Bomet County Commissioner, Ahmed Omar was saying some of the prominent politicians involved in the planning and funding of the chaos will be summoned to record statements.
All right. 2 people have already been arrested for that heckling incident in Bomet. Elsewhere, KRA wants tax taught in schools. They better start this because, yes, tax many Kenyans do not understand, and you always find yourself on the losing end once things get tough. On the international front, Haitians afraid the crisis will worsen. And in sports, athletes, the beauties of Lukenya run. Let's flip the page. The big headline on the back page, Serem wins first track medal for Kenya in African Games. And they talk about Mary Moraa sailing to the next round of the 400 meters after winning her heat, and Chepkoech finishing 4th in the women's 5,000 meters final, dominated by Ethiopians. And yes, this is at the ongoing African Games in Ghana. And there's also a very interesting headline at the back page. They talk about the world's worst national team chasing first win in 20 years. It is approaching 17 years since San Marino captain Matteo Vittaoli, the player with the most appearances in the country's history, first represented his national team. He's yet to celebrate a victory. San Marino national football team.
It reminds me of a team in EPL that has waited for quite a long time.
I clapped for you yesterday. Are you sure you want to come again? All right, that's the Standard today.
And the Daily Nation, the whole killer roads, and they say claims 25 lives. So tragedy, 12 students are among at least 25 people who have lost their lives in a spate of road accidents that have also left dozens injured in the last 3 days across the country. This even as the government's empty directives after every avoidable tragic crash put into question its commitment to strictly enforce traffic rules and ensure the safety of all road users. Was on pages 2 and 3. And they give a chronological events of since Saturday all the way to yesterday. In Baringo, where 2 people lost their lives, including a teacher and a student. In Kiambu on Saturday, TikToker Brian Shearer lost his life, by the way. In Bomet on Monday, 5 people. And in Migori, that is yesterday. And they having reports of about the deaths between 6 and 11. That's just yesterday. And in the morning yesterday, we were talking about the same matters. Quite sad.
It is a big discussion this week.
On the bottom, housing tax cuts this month. And they say President William Ruto has signed into law the new affordable housing bill that introduces a mandatory 1.5% levy on incomes months after the courts declared the deductions illegal. The deductions are expected to be factored on Kenyans' incomes starting this month. But, I mean, for a couple of months, Kenyans have already gotten used to, quote-unquote, the whole deductions.
Well, this time around, we'll have all the 2 deductions together, the one for housing and SHIF, which comes to about 4.25% of your gross income. So, yes, anticipate that.
It's becoming quite expensive living in Kenya now. On the right scroll, schools under investigation for quote-unquote selling for bond slots. And the Directorate of Criminal Investigations is probing more than 20 secondary schools in the North Rift of allegations of selling form on slots. So majority of the schools under investigation are national and extra county schools. A senior detective involved in the investigations revealed to this paper. Matters medical now, no end to patients' pain as doctors issue another strike notice over KRA tax push. It was on pages 4 and 5. And well, we're talking about dogs, and they're having it on the Inset magazine, the parenting, and they say what being a parent taught us about love. Mm-hmm. Oh yes, despite the whole heat that the Ugandan paper is telling us. And they say a furry friend not only teaches you patience and responsibility, but also the messiness and joys of family life. The joys that a dog would bring.
As long as it doesn't bite you.
Oh, yes. On the back page of this paper, that between matters housing levy returns, but then the 2023 African Games focus. They say question marks abound as Kenyan star runners get floored in track and field in Accra. That is on page 38. But on page 39, just remembering Kiptum, and they say in honor of my friend Kiptum. And the picture there is one Kiplagat, Kenya's Timothy Kiplagat, honoring his friend. He says, I used to work and get money, then head to the local brew dens. I will drink up all the savings and remain broke once again. That is the Daily Nation for you.
Tuangazie gazeti la Taifa Leo. Habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele, pepo wa mauti, masuala ya ajali za barabarani. Anasema zaidi ya watu 20 wapoteza maisha kwenye ajali, wakiwemo wanafunzi 12 wa chuo kikuu. Wanapeana takwimu zaidi muhimu kuhusu ajali za hivi punde. Machi 16 wawili wafa, Machi 18 na Machi 19. Siku 4 mfululizo. Anasema masuala ya ajali, pepo wa mauti amerejea tena kwenye barabara za humu nchini na kuwa watu zaidi ya 20 ndani ya masaa 72 kupitia ajali mbaya za barabarani. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili, na hii ndio habari kuu ambayo watu wanazungumzia. Vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele, zigo la ushuru wa nyumba laja, Wakenya wenye mapato ya chini kulipia ushuru wa nyumba wa kima cha 1.5% yao kila mwezi. Habari zingine, Biden sasa aonya Netanyahu. Amerika imeionya Israel dhidi ya kulishambulia jiji la Rafah katika ukanda wa Gaza. Pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, habari zaidi, aibu ya shule za kuuza barua za wanafunzi maskini. EACC DCI zachunguza shule za upili kuhusiana na uuzaji wa barua za wanaojiunga na kidato cha kwanza. Habari ya kutatanisha pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Na la mwisho, shtaka la uchochezi ni haramu. Mahakama yataja sheria kuhusu mapinduzi kama ya kikoloni na kikwazo kwa uhuru wa kujieleza, freedom of expression vis-a-vis dissent. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 3 wa jarida hili la Taifa Leo.
From Taifa Leo, let's take a look at another paper, and let me have it on Business Daily. Matters KCB. Right, we can take a look at People Daily first off. So the return of road carnage, and they say safety. Kenyans raised the alarm after loss of 30 people, including secondary school and university students in 4 days, triggering routine knee-jerk reactions by state officials. And the big question right now is it too little, too late?
Yes.
And how effective this is going to be. Reminds me of the whole conversation of having the whole knee-jerk reactions after the whole illicit brew, Manenos.
It's the same MO.
Oh, yes.
That they're employing on this.
On the left, revealed the deal that striking doctors rejected. Health workers maintained that salary proposed for interns by ministry was a slap on their faces. And, well, they say the whole strike continues until the deal is actually met. Matters schools, stop lying over cash for schools. The PS has been warned, was on page 8. And so according to a survey, reveals that ladies have a soft spot for money transfer services, luxury mobile phones, and an all-purpose flower brand. And of course, so it was on page 3. Let me have that load for more context on that. To just get to know what are the top 10 things that Kenyan women actually love. So according to this paper, they say, okay, let me have that. So what women want. M-Pesa tops list of favorite brands. So in the new survey on female consumer preferences, Equity Bank, Airtel, Samsung, and Ajab complete the top 5. And so highlighted there, M-Pesa and Safaricom are women's top loved funds.
You're talking about relationships and if at all finances do matter. That's your answer right there. The only reason why they prefer mobile money is because of money.
Oh, yes. And I'm trying to get more highlights on that, much as healthcare choices and the diverse preferences that they prefer. That is on that, what Kenyan women love.
Top 10 things Kenyan women love. Oh, they love a lot of things, but money comes first. All right.
I'm pretty sure
it's not me.
I'm pretty sure it was even hard to actually narrow it down to only 10. And just get the 10.
Mobile money is top love for Kenyan women.
Well,
says a lot.
Probably they actually tell us on our socials.
Well, that's a story on the People Daily. It's not me who's saying. So we can go to the next paper.
Oh, yes.
Yes, on the Business Daily, Matters Business revealed KCB Group Inc.'s deal to sell National Bank. And guys, I don't know why they're shocked. KCB Group is selling its subsidiary, the National Bank of Kenya, NBK, for an undisclosed amount, less than 5 years after it acquired the lender in a rescue deal that was shepherded by the National Treasury and the Central Bank of Kenya. KCB is going to make public the deal with a Nigerian lender, and NBK was acquired by KCB in October of 2019 in a share swap deal. Also, KRA in tough race to collect 1.1 trillion shillings in 4 months. The Revenue Authority collected 1.37 trillion in taxes in the 8 months that ended February, leaving it with a daunting task of raising an average of 280 billion monthly over the next 4 months to meet its 2.5 trillion shilling target for the current financial year ending in June. Despite the higher taxes, the taxman is still not able to raise the money as expected. More highlights on the ticker. Ex-investment banker mother faced 10.38 million shilling theft. There's an employee of Nairobi-based investment bank Genghis Capital who has been charged with the theft of that amount from the company. Elsewhere, Kenyan medics raise alarm over increase in pneumonia and TB cases. Doctors have raised the alarm over the rising cases of these two diseases, particularly in children and young adults, raising fears of a potential wave of COVID-19 infections. You see the connection there. And finally, EPRA caps permissible power blackouts at 20 per year, a year per client. And this is a very funny headline. They're talking about capping power blackouts to 20 per year. And you wonder, what's the standard? We should not be having any blackouts whatsoever. Why are you telling us, okay, fine, you'll only get 20, only 20 this year? Kenya Power faces pressure to upgrade its aging infrastructure and boost efficiency in reconnections during outages after EPRA capped the permissible number of unplanned blackouts in proposed changes aimed at improving services. Hey, we'll be counting. We'll be counting.
They have to be 20 or less.
Yes. Once it goes beyond 20, they should say, fine, okay, what happens after that? I tell you. Yes, that's a Business Daily.
All right. Let's take a look at Jumwa's house now. Cabinet Secretary Aisha Jumwa. So that's how the house looks like. And they say bankruptcy. Jumwa faces 60 million cash shilling suit. And CS paid 145 million cash shillings out of 215 for Runda House. That proprietor is now threatening to sue over. Was on page 2. And on that page 2, according to Aisha Jumwa.
Magnificent house there.
Oh, yes. So according to her, she says this is an insolvency case. I should be served personally, and I haven't. Therefore, I reserve my comment. She had been tasked on that.
There's a detail there I think you skipped. The CS actually paid 145 million shillings.
I read that, and so more context on that. She says, so 3 weeks, she has 3 weeks to pay a debt of 60 million or face a bankruptcy suit. So the proprietor here is Bevaj Furniture Limited, which moved to the Milimani Court on Tuesday, which is yesterday. And she's been given within 21 days or insolvency proceedings be filed against her.
So that's how a home worth 215 million shillings in Runda looks like.
Oh, yes.
Can you imagine just how much a 215 million shillings can do elsewhere in this country, if at all it wasn't in Nairobi or in that place that they're mentioning? What if you took that amount and went with it to Kisii? How much would you do with it?
Building a house or just development?
Whichever you choose, whatever you choose to do with it. This is one property worth this amount.
Yeah.
That money can do a lot more elsewhere. But hey, different strokes for different folks.
The highlights on this paper, on the bottom, 2 highlights there. Muranga farmers reap big from organic vegetable farming, and they call it Matters Better Nutrition on page 21. Remember, the whole avocado taxes are coming, so even as they're smiling on this one, might be frowning on the whole avocado tax. And there was a quote by one of the MPs from Kenya Kwanza yesterday saying the fact that the whole finance act was quite huge, they probably missed a few of some of what was written inside there. They probably focused on the whole affordable housing, but they probably missed some of these bits of avocado tax and other, what they thought was mundane, but right now is coming to affect the common mwananchi.
That, if I was him, whoever that was, I would have just kept quiet. All right.
Still on the star storm of a DPP delay to charge 35 COVID-19 billionaires. The DPP was summoned yesterday to appear before the Health Committee, as well as ESCC CEO, among others, as well as Minister of Health, as well as the PS actually. PS Matters Minister of Health, to just answer all this. And finally, Matters Road carnage, the very top scroll, accident deaths. Kenyatta University suspends classes, that is on page 8, suspended for about 3 days.
Yes.
As an alumni of that school, quite sad. Quite sad what did happen there. And that is the star for you. And our cue now to get into the dailies.
Yes.
Rather the cartoons.
The cartoon on page 14 of the Standard talks about the issue of enforcement of road safety regulations. And we have a matatu there, and it's branded speeding coffin. And you have law enforcement at a police check. One is the NTSA, one is the regular police. And the NTSA officer says, bottom up, uchumi bora ni pesa mfukoni. And the policeman there with a very fat tummy says, my friend, around hii ni ujipange. Yes, you'll be seeing a return of the NTSA working with traffic police to enforce safety on our roads. That's a cartoon on the Standard today. On the Daily Nation, it's about the affordable housing, a bill which was signed into law yesterday by President William Ruto. And we have a caricature of the president in that safety gear and running over hurdles. He has skipped so many hurdles towards the affordable housing. And it looks like finally he has his way and say. And that's a cartoon on page 17 of the Daily Nation. Matters affordable housing.
Right. Let's take a look at the Star. And it goes, the same matters affordable housing. And caricature of someone looking like President William Ruto, and trying to actually sign that document and send it into law. and has been written the house levy or levy. And he says, I have to sign this, my hands are not tied. But apparently the hands are tied by the gravel-looking man representing the judiciary as well as the common mwananchi. And yes, so that is the Star's take. On People Daily, a balance between the doctors' strike as well as the doctors, basically, and as well as the government, and each of them is saying, have mercy. And at the bottom is whoever is trying to balance all this is the common mwananchi who...
Patient.
A patient who is actually on that whole drip.
It's actually on IV.
Oh, yes.
And he's on carrying
drip.
this two feuding gentlemen. Doctors on one hand demanding for better salaries, government on the other hand showing empty pockets, and both calling for mercy.
Oh, yes. And this is a state of how things are looking like.
In Swahili they say fahali wawili wakipigana nyasi huumia.
Oh, yes. And the whole spot check in different parts of the country really show how this is quite sad.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, the CS for Health, Susan Nahomicha, says that operations at most public hospitals have not been affected, and you wonder what exactly has not been affected if doctors are not at work. So who's treating people? Is it a hotel? Then again, this is Kenya.
Oh, yes. And because they said take a look at how hot it might be today. So this is how the weather is looking like as of now, 28 minutes past the top of the hour. Let me just have that load efficiently. Right. You may say leo acha load pole pole.
I've seen it went as high as 28. That's still high enough to get dogs following you.
Actually about 17. All right, good. Let me have that. It's about 17 degrees Celsius
currently.
as currently, and that's also high.
And the system there looks like it's suffering from much heat as well.
It has said today I'm taking my time as slowly as possible. There you have it. Finally, as high as 28 degrees, and as low as so they say as low as 17 is what we're going to be having. Humidity of about 90%, whole winds of about 8 kilometers, and that is how the weekend is about to get into. Thursday as well as Friday, 28, but getting into as well as Sunday, they promise you there are chances of some light showers here in Nairobi, so prepare for that.
All right, that's the weather. We'll be looking at some of the headlines that we've been sampling later on State of the Nation. Do stand by for that conversation. Mm-hmm. But you can be part of this conversation online at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. Mm-hmm. Over to you, Nyaringita, for the day's news.
na ndo tukapatikana na ajali hapo Maungu, hapo Mombasa Road. Yeah.
Nilishtukia tu tumegongwa na nyuma na nikajipata niko nje nikibleed kwa uso peke yake.
One of the drivers of the ill-fated bus has laid blame on heavy rains that caused them to collide with an oncoming trailer.
Condition ya barabara kukua iko na mitaro ndio imesababisha ile gari sasa ikaanza kugeuka kama inarudi upande wa Nairobi. Otherwise zilikuwa ni gari mbili, hata hakukuwa na gari ya overtake. Ilikuwa ni hiyo trailer na hiyo basi yetu tu zilikuwa zinakutana.
The casualties who are airlifted for treatment in Nairobi are said to be in critical condition.
In a total of 7 patients, 3 on the first flight and 4 on the second flight. So they have suffered quite severe injuries. The ones we have brought have suffered injuries with the spine, injuries with the pelvis, massive bad fractures, and they have lost quite a lot of blood.
Kenyatta University has cancelled all classes for the next 3 days to stand in solidarity with their colleagues during this period of grief and sadness.
Tomorrow, all classes have been cancelled to give room for the students to mourn and to console with those who have lost their loved ones.
Education CS Ezekiel Mashogu, while condoling with the families, promised to ensure the safety of students during such events. Vera Alberta, 247, Nairobi.
And still on matters road carnage, Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki has ordered an immediate crackdown to curb road accidents, with the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport Kipchumba Murkomen reversing an order to bar NTSA from the roads. So this follows a spate of accidents in the last 3 days, one involving the Kapsabet Boys High School bus that claimed the lives of 2 people, another grisly road accident in Bomet causing 5 fatalities, and the devastating crash in Maungu that involved the deaths of 11 Kenyatta University students. Kisewa Emory with the details.
The Cabinet Secretary for Roads, Transport and Public Works, Kipchumba Murkomen, has recommended the return of National Transport Safety Authority officers on the roads, reversing an order by former President Uhuru Kenyatta. In a statement, the CS also ordered the mandatory retesting of all PSV drivers nationwide, as well as drivers getting medical checks. Elsewhere, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki has ordered for a national crackdown set to target unroadworthy vehicles in a program set to be handled by the Traffic Police and the NTSA.
We are coming out with a nationwide law enforcement measures against traffic offenses, against drunk driving, against unroadworthy vehicles, and also we will be very, very firm with all road users so that we all observe traffic rules.
CS Kindiki has insisted on officers strictly enforcing the law and taking a leading role in fighting corruption on the roads.
Law enforcement officers must strictly enforce the law, and we must also fight corruption on our roads, which is a big contributor to these road traffic accidents.
This comes after several accidents occurred across the country over the last 3 days. From the start of the year until February, about 3,090 Kenyans have either died or sustained injuries in road accidents. According to statistics released by the NTSA, 563 of the victims have succumbed, 1,403 have been seriously injured, and 1,124 have been slightly injured. Kisewa Emory, TV47.
From the road carnage to the medical fraternity, and Kenyans who visit different health facilities to access services will still face some serious challenges as doctors and the Ministry of Health haggle. As Elizabeth Atieno now reports, yesterday's meeting between the Doctors' Union and the representatives from Ministry of Health proved futile as other health unions, including clinicians, nutritionists and public health officers, threatened to join the strike in the next 5 days.
Tuesday morning, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union made their way to the Ministry of Labour for a consultative meeting with representatives from the national government. But a few moments later, they all walked out, expressing their displeasure with who they found at the table.
Strike may go as long as the 7 years where government has been on strike. And I'm saying this with a lot of confidence because today we were called for a meeting as ordered by the court at the Ministry of Labour. The government just brought to us the battery of lawyers in the meeting. There was no any representative from government to discuss this issue. Somebody may think we were in court or we were in the advocate ceremony.
Nationwide doctor strike has entered its sixth day. Patients in various health facilities are still struggling to access health services. Doctors have amplified their voices demanding for the implementation of the 2017 CBA. Further, healthcare providers have condemned reported plans by the government to slash their salaries.
But while we are in the meeting today in the morning, we were just shocked by a notice that is reducing the salary of our medical interns by 91%.
Basi sisi tumesema tunataka kusimama pamoja kwa sababu ukiona cha mwenzako kinanyolewa chako utie maji.
If you start dividing the healthcare workers in this country, your days actually numbered because your work is not to divide us.
We have seen the document from the Auditor General that is questioning the legality of allowances that we enjoy and recommending that the government should scrap them. But we want to tell them that let them dare.
Health unions, including the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers, Public Health Union, Kenya National Union of Pharmaceutical Technologists, and the Kenya Union of Nutritionists, have threatened to join the strike come Monday next week. Elizabeth Atieno, TV 47.
To the education sector, and a section of members of parliament has expressed concerns on Tuesday regarding the delayed disbursement of funds to schools, warning that such challenges could lead to a crisis in the education sector in the future, despite the government's assurance to release the remaining 25% of funds within the next 2 weeks. Public secondary schools still owe the government 16.25 billion shillings.
With just a few weeks left in the first term of the school calendar, the government is yet to release the allocation capitation totaling 16.25 billion Kenyan shillings, constituting 25% of the first term allocation to all public secondary schools. Addressing legislators on Monday, Principal Secretary Belio Kipsang from the State Department of Education expressed hope that the remaining amount would be cleared within 10 days. Furthermore, the government has reduced the capitation per student from 22,000 Kenyan shillings to 17,000 Kenyan shillings, citing limited resources and an increase in the number of students joining secondary schools. Despite stern warnings from the government to principals not to send students home for school fees, a section of MPs led by Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi has voiced concerns today, fearing consequences of delayed fund disbursement, which could limit activities within affected institutions.
We are likely to see a crisis of monumental proportions, not only in our high schools, but in the entire education sector. That something is not adding up. The government continues to promise release of capitation funds, and which funds never get to schools. What is happening between the promise and the National Treasury is something that is beyond our imagination.
They now want the government to address delayed disbursement not only in education but also in other public sectors, emphasizing the importance of timely funds release for efficient service delivery.
That what is going to happen is 10 years to come or 15 years to come, we'll start now facing challenges as a result of what is happening today in our education sector. So it is very important that the government adheres to the agreement with the principals or the stakeholders. And the other important bit which we need to look at as a country is the situation of prioritization in terms of release of money. Because if you analyze what is being released by Treasury, many of the other sectors are getting their money in time. So it just tells you how much, in terms of value, this government values the education sector.
Asante.
Paul Munio, TV 47.
Meanwhile, Azimio leaders and constitutional lawyers have criticized Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki for his arrest order on youths who heckled President William Ruto during his Bomet tour over the weekend, terming it against the law. So the outrage came on a day police arrested 2 suspects in Bomet in the wake of Kindiki's directive on Monday. Leaders from Bomet County have told the president to crack the whip on leaders who funded the youth, while apologizing to the president for the embarrassment caused during the incident. Apollo Kamau lays it down for us.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki's arrest order on suspects behind the heckling of President William Ruto during his tour of Bomet and Kericho counties over the weekend has caused outrage in the legal fraternity and the Azimio camp, terming it against the law and an attempt to return the country to dictatorship. In the wake of Kindiki's directive, 2 suspects have been arrested in Bomet, with police expected to close in on the financials of the chaos.
Professor Kindiki is in danger of going the tyrannical way, but it's a tendency we've seen feature severally in this regime, which is unfortunate. Heckling and booing is simply bad manners.
Heckling is a sign of freedom of expression. So I was even wondering why the president and his Kenya Kwanza team are feeling ashamed that people heckled them. What they need to do is to address what the people want, not to go and handcuff people. He's returning us to the Moi era.
In a scenario that became prevalent since the 2010 constitution took effect, President William Ruto found himself in unfamiliar waters in his own backyard after he was forced to calm down the crowd that was heckling Bomet Governor Hilary Barchok. After the incident, Bomet County leaders were quick to apologize to the president, asking him to crack the whip.
And when the president now comes, this is his backyard. And you see people start making a lot of noise. This is uncalled for. If I'm a leader who is hiring youths, I think I should be reprimanded as one of the party members of UDA. And I'm urging the president maybe to crack the whip because this is uncalled for.
We want to apologize to the president. And that is very important. We have to apologize that this happened in front of him.
Constitutional lawyers, however, argue heckling is a constitutional right guaranteed under Articles 33 and 37 of the Constitution on freedom of expression and right to picket. With public debate divided on heckling as a right of speech, the onus is on security officers to ensure there are no embarrassing incidences during political factions beforehand. Apul Kamau, TV47 at Parliament Buildings.
And still on matters legal affairs, President William Ruto has finally assented to the Housing Bill 2023 into law. So this comes a week after the National Assembly and the Senate passed the bill, and as Mike Kagongo reports, some state agencies, among them the Ministry of Lands and Housing, National Housing Corporation, county governments and private organizations have been tasked with overseeing the implementation of the affordable housing project.
The heated controversy surrounding the housing bill comes to rest after President William Ruto signed the bill into law on Tuesday in State House, Nairobi. Several interested parties had opposed the bill in court due to lack of a legal framework, but the 2 houses of parliament passed it later after amending the controversial Section 84. The High Court last year declared unconstitutional the housing levy, a decision that was upheld by the appellate court on the grounds that its introduction was unprocedural. The enactment of the bill will see Kenyans gain access to various categories of affordable housing. The categories comprise affordable social housing units, targeting person whose monthly income is below 20,000 Kenyan shillings. Affordable housing units targeting persons whose monthly income is between 20,000 Kenyan shillings and 149,000 Kenyan shillings. Affordable middle-class housing units accessible to persons earning over 149,000 Kenyan shillings per month. And rural affordable housing units targeted at Kenyans living in areas not classified as urban areas.
That means the people who are who earn 20,000 and above, they will have a 50% chance to own houses in our affordable housing program.
According to the bill, priority will be accorded to slum areas to ensure decent housing. The implementation of the project will be overseen by some state agencies, among them the Ministry of Lands and Housing, National Housing Corporation, county governments and private organizations mandated by the Housing Fund Board. The president's seal now means every Kenyan, whether salaried or unsalaried, will contribute 1.5% of their monthly earnings towards the project. The bill was also amended to facilitate Kenyans get only one unit in as much as they reach the criteria as prescribed by the Kenyan government starting at the end of this month. Mike Kagwango, TV47 from State House in Nairobi.
Thank you, Mike, for that. We'll be definitely discussing that in a few coming up. The state of the nation, as you can see, definitely. Malib Arnold, Strategic Communications Advisor, UDA party, is right here with us. Freddie Nimule will be joining you in a few. You can always be part of this conversation on our socials. 0795 045 864 is the number to call in live. 2047 is the SMS number at TV47KE on Facebook. I'm used to Stanley Nyarungita. Tunani around 8 a.m. as we talk about matters relationships. Don't go too far.
Explore Africa.
then the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta tried to go to the euro market. We were turned away because our economy at the macro level wasn't supporting, as in our, let me just say, our CRB was not proper at that particular point. So we failed when we tried to go to the euro market. It is your taxes, your contribution under William Ruto that has actually corrected the macros, worked out the ratios, the three ratios, and then with that, we then had...
Beyond creating a better perception, is it just a matter of perception?
No perception. You know, the three ratios, let me just pass you through. Number one, we're talking about GDP to debt. You are talking about export to revenue, and then revenue to GDP. All those three ratios, they were not matching. We wouldn't get to the euro market at that particular point. Now, we've been able to access the euro market to settle that. You know why? Because you and I have, in the last 16 months, been able to do one thing. We've been through our taxes, been able to correct the macros of the macroeconomics, balanced it up in a way that has actually helped us actually go back to the euro market. It's actually like brought back the World Bank on the other side. No one really wants to talk about that end. But your taxes, your work, going out every morning, has actually fed into it. So when you talk about the euro, why didn't we then settle that much earlier?
It wasn't it an issue of perception that probably the IMF and the World Bank did not see as
it's not perception. It's absolute numbers. This is economy, not voodoo. This is not witchcraft. It's economy. It's about absolute numbers.
So, okay. On
that particular end, so when we actually came in and we demonstrated that we mean business, we have done well. The numbers actually spoke to that particular end. The export of what we are putting out, what we've been able to raise. Just to walk you back, last year at a time like this, unga was 230 shillings. Now as we speak, same time, unga is 130. There is no strain. We are not asking our neighbors. We are not dishing out letters.
When Kenya Kwanza took over, the fuel prices per litre were 137. Right now, yes, it has gone down slightly. It's now 199.
No, I'm just giving you higher. It was running up. Everybody expected the dollar to go to 200. We've managed that. So we can go to a list and so much. We have stabilized this thing. I don't want even to use the word stabilization. What we have done is that we have resuscitated an economy that was in a coma. Okay. We are now nursing it and now prepping it up for takeoff.
Because my issue is
it is the same reason, by the way, why we actually have been able to get IMF opening up its books for us, we being able to go back to the euro market. And remember, the papers I had written, so and beyond, everybody else.
The improved way of handling debt.
Yes.
Is there any particular dividend or direct dividend that the Kenyan is going to get from this higher taxation?
The cost of living already is actually going down.
Compared to when? In comparison to which
it takes time. No, you see, already things were getting bad. Everybody, and let's not behave like we didn't know. Everybody, both locally and internationally, knew that we were going south. People thought we would actually hit the rock bottom. We've not. We've actually been able to salvage the situation. So as we move forward, the cost of living is actually going down. You can check that. The cost of cooking oil, no one wants to talk about that. The cost of gas, it's quick, let's forget about it.
Relative to sometime last year.
Relative to sometime last year, but then it had started at some point. The dollar was doing a runaway. It's actually gone back. Now we are almost starting to complain about the same. So the dividends are coming in, and I can tell you that effectively, by the time we do the new budget, we hit September this particular year, now that feeling will actually be there. Because again, it's taken so much time for us to stabilize. You do not expect that impact. You go to bed and then wake up in the morning and find there's money in your pocket. As we work through this year, you are actually going to see that. So we fixed a lot of those. At macro level, we've sorted that. Now, after sorting the macros, now we go to the micro now. That's where now the people are going to feel it. So already you can see it. If you do not take care of the roof, you're not going to tell me you're going to take care of the floor.
There are those who argue that higher taxation does not necessarily improve revenue collection. And we're seeing such a headline on the front page of the Business Daily. Yeah. KRA in tough race to collect 1.1 trillion in 4 months. because Kenya Revenue Authority collected 1.37 trillion shillings in taxes in the 8 months that ended in February, but they did not hit the target, despite higher taxation. And that's a concern, that yes, you may be collecting a lot more, but because you're not hitting your target, it means that Kenyans will still be in dire straits for the foreseeable future.
Who has set the target? It's government that is setting that particular target. But comparatively, are we still collecting the money we collected in 2022?
But the expectation by government is that if we collected this way...
It is a target set by us. Yet we have collected much more money than has been collected in 2022.
But the target is based on what service delivery the government is hoping to do to the citizens.
Yes, and part of those deliverables is actually taking care of debt. So, first of all...
Back to my question. So apart from the debt burden, direct service delivery to Kenyans is not expected to improve anytime soon.
How is it not expected to improve when already we are seeing the dividends? We are seeing the dividends.
You've only talked about
that's what I'm saying.
debt
No, I
management.
know, I've talked about the cost of living, for example. The fuel is going down. The normal overheads about the cost of living have actually gone down. We are now doing housing. We are talking about 46,000 houses that are already under construction. When they come into the market, they do one thing. They grant us at least those about 46,000 households getting a newer and better, a decent home that is actually affordable. It means that we are moving a number of people from poverty and also enhancing how we are living. You don't want to talk about food, for example. It's down there. You've seen our neighbors fighting each other about some disease that was found in 2012 because they have nowhere to sell maize. They initially thought that they would come and dump maize in Nairobi. Nairobi has got its own maize. Now, Kenya has now its own maize, and they have to actually price it much lower for them to sell it here. There's so much. You can actually look at so much that is working out there. Already, you can actually feel it. It's not that Kenyans have actually kept quiet because they are not able to speak. Kenyans don't know how to keep quiet when they're actually pressed. Things are actually easing. You can actually feel that on the financial sector. You can see the rebound at the bars. Our stock exchange has actually come back. The shilling now is actually being said as the best performing currency. And as it does that, effectively you're going to see that. As the fuel goes down, that is also going to actually feature into production. Okay. So, whatever way you look at it.
Well, you say a lot of Kenyans agree, some disagree, and one of them is Moni at Moni Glory, I think, on X. She says, this is how a law that the citizens don't want is made. Reportedly, the majority of Kenyans did not want it. And that's the other aspect of this. This law and even the new social health insurance scheme met a lot of opposition. But at the end of the day, we see that President William Ruto has had his way. And the concern is that the trend we should expect, the fact that Parliament has been accused and criticized, rightly so, of failing to scrutinize some of the government policies that have been brought their way, of which they should, to add value, if not not necessarily just to shoot them down, but to add value. That last week we saw probably a proposal from Treasury about imposing 16% VAT on bread and milk, and seeing the trend as it is, that anything that comes from government eventually passes. Should that be the expectation going forward, that any proposal, including the budget estimates that the country processing, that they will be passed as is?
First of all, Fred, let me just say this. That we have got a government that is run by human beings. But over and above, it's important to actually point out this, that the decisions coming from government are actually, first of all, well thought out. They are informed by sufficient data to support why it is necessary. So they come from a place of well-meaning, meaning good.
It has always been good intentions, but we needed these other institutions.
And I know that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But I actually have to also flip and tell you this, that a lot of these decisions are informed by data. They are supported by need to provide public goods. But as a country, what are the ways of actually supporting such like services that we seek or we require? Number one, by self-funding them. We raise our own revenues and pay for that. The alternative is that then we can actually go and borrow. Because when you talk about donations, they are no longer there in the market today to actually support government action as it used to be in the days of old. So we come to a place where like, no one can actually argue that we don't have a housing problem. We do have a housing problem. I have said this on this set before, that 60% of Nairobians live on 5% of Nairobi's landmass. We pay for it through other ways. We pay for it through tackling crime. We lose human capital. There are estates where people don't live beyond 25. We pay that through health. Because when they live in those conditions, they are deplorable conditions. The health is terrible. Kids don't live and turn out well. So we spend a lot of money correcting that particular situation by other ways. So somehow, when it comes to the human condition, if you think that you can overlook your health, you pay for it through other means. So we are saying, can we have a balance? It's the dream that we as a people had in Article 43 of the Constitution, socio-economic empowerment. So we need that. So what are we, when we talk about the housing problem, just because it was decampaigned vigorously by an opposition at that particular time that wasn't happy that they had lost an election, doesn't mean that it's wrong. This is not something that is new. William Ruto is not doing housing. He's not the first person to do housing.
My concern is on the role that these other institutions play in processing such government policy. Yes, the intention is good and well-meaning. Are we saying we no longer have need for the Houses of Parliament? For example, the finance bill that the Finance Act 2023 that was challenged in court so many different times, it was because of the lack of scrutiny at parliamentary level. Are we saying we should expect the same this time round? We are about 2-3 months from the budget processing another Finance Act.
Actually, what is happening, if you really consider governance for what it is a very good thing. That is national dialogue.
Lack of scrutiny at parliamentary level?
It's not lack of scrutiny. We are asking the people responsible to deepen their participation. That as a people we think, okay, you guys did scrutiny, but then the court feels you should have done much more. We are asking much more of these people. The executive comes up with an idea. Yes, it's well-meaning. When it goes to Parliament, Parliament asks questions, and when Parliament asks those questions, citizens in and of themselves feel like these guys should have done much more. They go to court. We are having a national dialogue. That should not be seen as a struggle.
So if at all the affordable housing bill that was signed, the act now that was signed into law yesterday, if it is challenged in court, we shouldn't expect complaints from the executive because it is the process of dialogue that we have.
You expect those complaints because complaints are also part and parcel of dialogue. But what we are having is a robust national dialogue at institutional level and even at individual level. That when we give you a job to do and you do it and we feel like you should have done much more, we ask more of it. So the process in court are okay. The noises you hear both on political fronts, in parliament and anywhere are okay. So, and by the way, anyone who has actually been part and parcel of this particular journey should not be judged. What are they doing? They have added value. Like, for example, as we speak today, we have brought in people initially.
How has Parliament added value when they passed the bill the way it was without a single amendment? How has Parliament added value?
Who was the originator of the bill? It is Parliament. So when you say that it has passed the way, it has not passed the same way. That's not true. The bill is not the same as was. Number one, we now clearly provide for the people who are not on pay as you earn, the formerly employed. Now there is an allowance for them to actually come on board.
And the questions are asked about that because I can see someone here, Alfred Silvanir, asks housing levies for those employed and promised each will access one house. Mama Boga hujawai contribute in house contribution yet, ako na imani atapata nyumba. Maujabu haya. People still do not understand how those who are not salaried will actually get to contribute to this.
So in the Act, it provides that Parliament will come up with policy because at programmatic level, what we are mixing up here, Fred, is that we are mixing up legislation, policy and programs.
So Parliament will still have to come up with
They will come up with a policy, and that will have to ensure that there is public participation. If there's no provision for that, they have no room to come up with that. So now we are saying Parliament comes up with a framework through guidelines, and now that we are having a board, we've actually established a fund that has got a board. They come up, that is an administrative process that you do not expect to find in legislation. Otherwise,
are you saying we should expect a different process in Parliament
what
to
we're
come
asking,
up with a legal framework on how?
An enabling, because now we have got the legal provision,
Because this is the same challenge, this is the same hurdle that the Finance Act that proposed this housing levy last year
it didn't have a framework. Now we have got a framework, a clear one. One of the reasons why that was challenged in court is that there was no legal framework. We now have done a lot to that effect. After having done that, this is legislation. We will have to escalate now because legislation precedes policy. Mm-hmm. And then administrative action because if you expect that in an act of parliament and that parliamentarians can sit down and actually break that down, we have got a board that will be specifically with the qualification and experience to work out that, to come up with a programmatic explanation and framework that comes back to us as a people, and we will say, this is okay, this is not. Then that way we come on board. That is how it works everywhere. What we have is that we have sorted the legislative process. We will go to the policy level and then take care of the administrative issues.
But we've seen some laws that, or some provisions, even of the Constitution, which have lacked proper formula of how to implement and have stayed hanging for years, including the two-thirds gender rule. For 14 years, there's not been a way of doing it. Now we're talking about, yes, we have a legal framework for the affordable housing bill on how non-salaried people will contribute to it, but without a proper way of doing it.
That is not a very fair comparison.
Isn't it a loophole of just ensuring that the court is pacified and we move on?
If Parliament sits down, by the way, if Parliament is going to do the work of the executive, like Parliament is supposed to do legislation.
Yes.
What you're asking Parliament is Parliament to go further and do the executive work of coming up with the policy, of coming up with administrative action and all that. Then what will the fund do? Why do we have a board that will have a secretariat, specialists whose work is actually to run that? What will they do?
So it means for the foreseeable future, the only contributors to the housing, affordable housing project are going to be the salaried workers.
Not really. Already,
because there's still no provision on how non-salaried people will
already there has been a window for voluntary opt-ins. That was said that the law did not expressly speak about it. Now, there's the pillar. We have built the pillars. We will actually do the walls and ensure that it works. So, it's not so much of a big issue. The board once in place, and that is going to happen very fast, will actually then do the breakdowns, but that will again be subjected to public participation. Because we took on a participatory governance framework as a people when we passed the Constitution in 2010. That is why no one should be complaining, or rather overly complaining when people go to court. No one should be complaining. We decided that we'll have a participatory government. That participatory government means that even if you, Fred, are the member of parliament of TV47, representing TV47 in parliament, and that while you are there, you don't do what they want, somebody at TV47, assuming this is a constituency, will reach out to court, can tackle it differently, or they themselves can actually show up with a memorandum and ensure that they better what you have. It's not enmity what that is actually happening.
But we've seen the kind of sentiments, even from the executive, about judicial actions and the accusations of the judicial overreach, accusations of corruption, simply because the decision didn't go. Now you're saying
the accusation of corruption. That's what I'm actually saying, that I will not be surprised if somebody goes to court this morning.
You're saying that we should expect that this conversation to continue, meaning that you expect that people may challenge.
Yes, but we should look at it two ways, and those who do it should also do it in the real spirit that informed the provisions in law.
Lack of clarity on how non-salaried people will get back to this.
It is part of what that is not lack of clarity. First of all, we need to provide for in law that they will participate. How they participate is a policy action. Mm-hmm. That policy business cannot be given to Parliament unless we want now to ensure that Parliament does that. You spoke about judicial overreach. There is a time when the judiciary has actually been fair. And then there are times where the judiciary also appears to be holding the hand of Parliament and writing the laws for them. I can point to you several examples where you will read a ruling and that ruling leaves Parliament with no room to exercise their right as the legislative house, or rather as the legislature, but they will have to rewrite that law according to how a judge did that. And when a judge does that, the judge is encroaching on the space of the legislature. So that also, there's no problem in calling that out. But I do not think anybody has said that the judiciary is corrupt for passing what they do. When people talk about judicial corruption, they are referring to cases that are known. Cases like, for example, we have seen where people have misused the small claims court. So you know that you are sued. No one ever served you papers. You never got there. It's all over online, and that has not been said in court.
Came out after the housing levy experience.
I'm actually giving you this one now is about citizens sharing their experience online.
Okay.
That you only meet auctioneers. No one, you never knew that you were sued on the road. You never knew anything happened. You just see people showing up with the paperwork, making claims. Because over the time, there are elements of corrupt people in the judiciary, just like they are in all other sectors. And that is not wrong to call that out.
The question I have is that the issue that the judiciary raised when they blocked this levy was the issue of discrimination.
But we didn't call them, no one called them corrupt for doing that.
Back to this issue of discrimination that they pointed out, that you cannot be deducting getting mandatory contributions from salaried people and leave everyone else who's supposed to benefit. Yet, as it is right now, without a proper framework of how these non-salaried people will contribute directly, which you say could take another process, we don't know how much time it will take, it means there's still some form of discrimination. Only salaried people will get deductions at the end of this month. No one else will.
I have a question for you. Who benefits from pay as you earn, your income tax? Who benefits from it?
But everyone pays tax.
No, I'm saying, no, not really.
Everyone does pay tax.
No, this one is a levy.
People pay tax.
This one is a levy. Let's start from this point. I have asked for your pay as you earn. Mm-hmm. It's only levied on you because you are employed, right?
But on the other hand, business people also pay a different tax that I do not contribute to.
Let's get to this. There are people who don't pay income tax. Your way of paying income tax, it's levied on you because you are employed. Why then is pay as you earn not discriminatory?
On the other hand, business people pay taxes that I do not contribute.
Okay, how many business people?
And I get to benefit from that as
How many business people? Let's just be real here. Over 18 million Kenyans are employed differently, right? Mm-hmm. We have got about 3.7 million people with pay as you earn, who submit their pay as you earn. So where exactly are these 14%? So when we speak about widening the tax base, it's trying to trap in all the other people. And do you think these other people survive by air? No. The informal sector has become the biggest job creator since 1992. That is 32 years down the line. So the informal sector, the word informal itself means it's gray. The data itself is a little bit hazy. That is where a lot of money is. But somehow, when you say that the housing levy was being discriminatory purely because it was being levied on the employed, then literally, because you don't get to dictate who uses who benefits from your pay as you earn. Mm-hmm. Here, like in law, it's actually been clearly that
for
those who are contributing,
the housing levy is the same as pay.
That argument, I'm just saying that thinking that informed that
it is discrimination
was faulty.
That the court.
It's also discriminatory for you to do pay as you earn.
Don't you think that actually this
do you get to choose your pay as you earn?
Will meet the same kind of hurdle at the judiciary?
Do you get to choose your pay as you earn?
I'm talking about what the
I want you to get my question. Do you get to choose your pay as you earn?
Well, I don't.
You don't. But yet you have used the example of business people. Do you know that business people can actually decide what they are paying? And there are other people who are not business people and they are not employed like you, but they are in meaningful or rather gainful employment. They don't get to pay what you are talking. They don't do ITC2 and they don't do ITC1 like you. Okay. So let's get here. That thinking around the levy being discriminatory is faulty.
Okay. So the ruling by the court was faulty?
That's faulty. That is why there is the room for appeal. I actually think that ruling is not fair. But then, be that as it may.
Time for us to take a break.
We do not probably agree with what they did, but we can always abide by what they say.
All right. You're watching Morning Cafe. This is a State of the Nation. I'm in studio with Arnold Maliba, the Strategic Communication Advisor of the UDA party. We'll be back to discuss a lot more after this. Welcome back. This is Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Indimuli. We continue with this discussion here in studio on State of the Nation with Arnold Maliba, Strategic Communications Advisor, UDA Party. Maliba, I'm just looking at some of the comments, and yes, some people do support this move. Teddy Waswa is one of them. He says, the good thing is that you have scrapped the 10% deposit. I can continue with some same rent I was paying at my current rental house as at a mortgage of 3%. Boma yangu registration successful. But Philip Mnyoki on Facebook asks, how and what will be their initial contribution? Kitendawili version 2. That's the same question I'm asking. Everyone is wondering, okay, fine, salaried people, we know we will pay at the end of this month. The court talked about this discrimination. Are we sure that non-salaried people will start their contributions as well?
There is no discrimination. By the end of this week, we will have the board, the fund in place. The board actually already put in place, and a framework to that particular end. Like I said, that is an administrative and policy level work. We cannot put that on Parliament to do legislation to that effect. Mm-hmm. So if the board fails, and that is their business, because there are functions of the board, right? We had to create a fund where we actually are putting in money. That was also an issue that had actually been put out there, so that we just don't pool the money together with all other things. People wanted that money, and when you create a fund, it means that the money is safeguarded. You do not get creative along the way. For example, if something comes up and you say, okay, we've collected money, but the houses can wait, we will deal with it. Now the money goes specifically to a fund. That is taken care of. So
you're saying the housing levy will not be used to repay debt?
That's what you people were claiming initially. Mm-hmm. Now I'm actually telling you that's not going to happen. We mean exactly what we said.
It won't go to the consolidated fund?
Well, the consolidated fund is that one big thing that all of us pay into. Mm-hmm. But specifically this one is earmarked as a fund. So for this particular purpose. So that already has been safeguarded. That fund will have a board. Now, we've brought in a provision that allows the board and Parliament to actually come up with the policies, because the housing programs are so intensive. You cannot have hundreds of pages in legislation to explain these small things. Mm-hmm. That will be done subsequently as programs. But the main pillar that is law has actually been taken care of. As such, what have we done? We have expanded the contribution base away from the employed only. And now there's the provision subsequent to the framework that will actually be provided, that other people can actually come on board. Number two, we actually have reduced it from the 2% initially to 1.5%, matched by the employer. The 10% has actually been done away, the compulsory 10%, that if you are contributing well and you are not able to raise that particular 10%, we can come up with a flexible, and the board will do that. Come up with a flexible means that actually onboards you onto it. Number three, we now have got county committees. Initially, that was not there. So even if we say that this has delayed, the court action and the protestations have delayed, but they have added value by ensuring that counties also participate. That would have been done later. But at this particular point, we count that as a success and value addition. Okay. You just need to look at it from that end. Number four, there's the refund. Now, very, very clearly, that upon the maturity, you get your money 90 days once you actually have asked for it. Now, it's clear. There are two things. Either your money eventually or the house. At the end of maturity, you are either getting a house or you will get your refund if you want your money. And that money can actually be moved to somebody else. Like, for example, if I have actually been contributing, I've not gotten money, I can pass that money to my daughter, to my son, to any other person.
Okay.
Then we are targeting jobs. That's something that no one really is talking about here. We are targeting 1 million jobs out of this. The argument of whether they are permanent or not permanent jobs is that people just want to be gainfully engaged. If this particular project actually helps that, why not do it? So we are talking about 1 million jobs out of this particular project. Having 1 million Kenyans engaged, whether directly on the construction sites, to the supply chain, or after, around that, is still an important thing because it feeds into the economy. And then finally, of course, this is actually open. Initially, it was supposed to be for guys here. It's now open for Kenyans who are here, and even those in the diaspora.
Okay.
So we are at a place where this particular haggling has actually added value to this particular process. Not that it will not be done in the process, but at least Kenyans felt that some of these things were supposed to be done at this particular point.
But you do anticipate that, yes, there could be some legal challenges going forward, but will only help
it is expected
to boost the conversation.
We hope that we have now reduced the gap of difference.
Okay.
Because the initial gap, all these issues, we've taken care of a number of them. So if there is any new ones, it's now a shorter distance,
okay,
not as long as it was. But then let me say this, even as we look at this program, we've been too antagonistic around this particular program. But I need to tell Kenyans out there, you can oppose if you want, but ensure that you apply. Do not listen to these people who actually are making noise here, yet they already have been on Boma Yangu. Make noise as much as you want on social media, do whatever you want to do, but ensure that you, especially for the employed, that you apply. Because at the end of the day, you are going to contribute. So you will contribute. So either you get the house or you will get your money, but it's good to actually have the house. So ukitaka we pinga, lakini fanya nini? Hakikisha you apply for it.
The housing tax cut starts this month. Salaried employees, for the rest of Kenyans, we still do not have a proper framework for how they will contribute.
We will have a framework.
We will have it,
by the end of the week. We will actually have a very clear framework. And that framework is simply saying how you are coming on board. Like I said, that is an administrative process.
True.
Because the law already has provided that you will be part and parcel of it. So what we are supposed to do is the how.
Exactly, the how. Okay. Now, when we started this conversation, the general question was on whether the expectation, it is a legitimate expectation that higher taxes will result in better services.
Are there higher taxes?
And
this is a levy, by the way. It's your money.
It is
the house or the money. Eventually, at the end of the day, it's either my money or a house.
It is. Let's call it a deduction.
Yeah.
A statutory deduction.
No, it's not statutory deduction.
And let's move to the SHIF.
Okay.
Where deductions begin this month as well. It comes at a time when we're facing a serious crisis in the health sector. Doctors are on strike. The debate is on their deployment, and there's no money. Yes, the government has said there's simply no money. If you look at the cartoon on the People Daily, both the government and doctors are calling for mercy, because on one hand, doctors are demanding for employment of interns. The government says it has no money. But when there are higher deductions, especially towards that, months before the SHIF is even rolled out, isn't it a legitimate expectation that now that we're giving you more money, you should be able to sort out this mess immediately?
It's not the doctors who are giving government money to give them money. But then this is the point.
It is the Kenyans who need these services.
The doctors' claims are legit. That is a legit expectation, to have those guys who've gone to school to actually be posted and to actually be compensated according to the services they provide, which is actually...
Is it a legitimate expectation from Kenyans to expect a faster resolution to this stalemate?
Yes. Again, it is right of Kenyans to actually expect that this should actually, because it's a matter of life and death, it's important that we get to talk. Also, it would be important for us to also listen to government on the other side and actually see somebody at the Ministry of Health is not seated there trying to frustrate doctors. No one has got that business. CS Nakumicha is not in the business, and no one in this government wants to sit out there and frustrate anyone. It is our financial circumstances. We have just taken care of Eurobond the other day that actually threatened to tank us. We were even thinking about going into default. So we've just sorted that. What are we asking for? We're asking for a little bit of time, a little bit of understanding. I know the other reactionary response will be, but you are paying these other people, you are creating these particular jobs. Society is made up of different pillars.
It's an issue of priorities.
No, society is
we could prioritize housing at the expense of the health of citizens.
People have died because of a leg injury. Others have died because of the stomach. Others have died because of a hand. Others have died because of the head. Every part of society is important in this thing we call Project Kenya. So we cannot have a level where we are saying, if you're paying teachers this way, then why are we not a priority? If you're paying these ones, then there is a balance. Like the body policy has got its expectations. Fair, clear. But do we have the money? Or do we are trying to move away from a place where we are borrowing to consume. We are trying to move away from a place where we bring down expenditure as low as possible so that we are able to help the economy to actually kick off properly. So whatever is happening here is that doctors are hard bargainers, very hard bargainers, and that is good. As they ask that, for example, no one supports having interns, people who actually have worked so hard. And remember that those are some of the best academic products we actually have as a society, as a country. So we cannot have them going out there. Some of whatever is being compensated to them is not so much what will look like is friendly. But also on the flip side, remember that we have subsidized their training.
They should be happy with whatever they're getting, 47,000 shillings.
Because if they were to, not really happy, no one says that they should be happy. I'm talking about understanding. That for them to go, today, no parent in this country, very few parents in this country can train a doctor from their own pocket. It's too expensive. So government comes in and subsidizes that. So as you come out, we will sort this as we move forward. What I'm thinking is that there should be a back-to-work framework that actually considers all this. A framework that ensures that we understand where you are coming from, but also understand where we are, and also look at the service that we are trying to provide. It's actually a critical one. So this one, I would actually call for a voice of reason as opposed to picking sides.
Okay.
Because if you pick sides here, you either are insensitive or plain stupid. Look at what doctors are asking for. Legit. But also see where government is coming from.
But it's coming at a time when the collection, especially towards
that collection, why is that collection? Why are we pushing towards that particular collection? We already have got, we actually got, in the words of the president, tulipata economy kama iko kwa mtaro. Ndio tunatoa. Hiyo collection unasema imetusaidia kutoa economy kwa mtaro kwanza. Hii economy, we are still nursing it.
It's months before the rollout of the SHIF.
Yes.
Even registration has not even kick-started.
Yes.
For SHIF.
So for SHIF,
really say that there are going to be immediate benefits in as far as SHIF is concerned. The deductions are this month.
Allow me to speak about SHIF. You see, we did, these are some of those explanations people don't put out there. But we've run about 7 years of experiment with trying to have masses insured. And one of that was for the OVCs, orphans and vulnerable children, then the elderly, and then the children in high school. We realized that the money we were spending on insuring children in school wasn't so much. But NHIF was collecting so much money, but if you were to look at it proportionally, you realize that we weren't. It wasn't covering as many people proportionally. And we realize if this can actually work for the kids in high school, for the OVCs, with the money that we are putting in, and it's working fairly well, why is it that we have got so much money here and proportionally it doesn't serve a similar mass? Say now, if we were to restructure this, we will cover more people and get more benefits. And that's what we are actually doing at the moment. For SHIF, anyone who's actually opposed to it, we can have those small T's crossing the
It's not necessarily opposition to SHIF.
And such.
Because it's handling of the health sector. For Kenyan, it doesn't really matter if it's NHIF or SHIF. They just want proper delivery of medical services, whichever name you give it. At this point in time, we have a doctor's strike. Private hospitals have withdrawn their services from NHIF. They say they will not attend to anyone. SHIF registration is not about, is yet to start. And the government is clear that the services or the full rollout will be in the new financial year. That means after July. So does it mean that in the interim, there are no interventions that can happen towards health delivery service? And that's the legitimate expectation that I'm asking about. Higher taxes, no service.
This idea, to push this line of higher taxes and no services is not entirely true. Already we have seen our contribution in the last 16 months, what it has done. And by the way, Kenyans, thank you for rescuing your own country. Otherwise, we were going into default. It is that uncomfortable extra shilling you've actually contributed that has actually put us in places where we actually have avoided a default. So if anyone has not actually said this, we need to actually tell Kenyans that we will be worse. We are not where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be.
We help with the debt burden, but when it comes to services directly, that's a concern.
We are moving there. That's what I'm actually saying. That here we have got a situation on transition from NHIF, even as we move to SHIF. Largely, it's retained the same people, or rather the board is not. It's the provision of services that actually structure it to the level that it looks like as now it takes the word SHIF. Now, looking at where we are going, the registration will be worked on. Remember, we still have got legal action on. There's court action moving around. The transition. Like I said, we took on a constitution that allowed us this freedom to do the things that we're doing around. The flip side to that is that then you have got such like situations where you are supposed to move on to a new platform. You are not able to move because somebody has gone to court, and we must respect court. So even as we do the transitioning, it's not that, but the health sector is so complex that we cannot solve it with simplistic lines. Like, for example, it should be so straight. If you're going to deal with personnel, for example, that's how you train, how you certify, quality control, and ensure, see how difficult it is to actually get those personnel. Then there is the systems in place.
There are 3 months between now and the beginning of the new financial year.
It's a lot of time.
That's a whole quarter of a year.
I know, that's a lot of time.
With lack of a clear service provision from that sector, that would mean disaster.
There's a little bit of panic because the people saying no to NHIF have not been stopped from using it. It's only their worry. That needs to be, somebody needs to speak to that. And that is happening in the back room. Somebody needs to actually tell Kenyans that shouldn't be happening. But because some of these private service providers are in this, have to take care of their interest, it's important they do that particular end. So the health sector was, for the long time, of course, it's faced challenges. We need to still re-engineer and rethink it properly so that then it can actually serve us. There has never been a time when the health sector worked optimally. We've always had complaints. And we hope that with the SHIF, the new laws that we put in place, the new programs we are enhancing, we will solve that. Like I've told you, policy, legislation always precedes policy. Okay. So what we have taken care of is legislation. We are moving into the policy realm. So with that, then we get programmatic. So over time, within that 90 days, a lot of these things will actually have fallen into place. Not entirely everything, but a lot will actually have worked around. So I don't want to call these teething problems. But these are problems we've had for a while.
Problems in the health sector could mean life or death.
For example, we didn't become a country in the last 16 months. We've been a country for the last 60 years. Yet these challenges have actually persisted. Okay. So there is an attempt we are putting in. So rather than rain on all the attempts, passing all the laws we actually put in place, trying to restructure this particular sector, also trying to engage doctors. And we shouldn't also look at the doctors who are out there asking for better conditions of work, to ensure that their fellows are actually also engaged. We shouldn't look at them as people who do not understand what they are doing. They also have got a right, and whatever they're asking for feeds directly into the quality of services that we receive. Okay. So you realize that even doctors themselves, who are the service providers, have even sometimes are speaking for the patient. Because a lot of times, like you've told me, and that should not be the attitude, that Kenyans don't care whatever the name it is, what they just want is services. That is not the spirit of the Constitution. The Constitution says that you are a co-governor in the governance of this country. Okay. So it is also your business. So if you meet any person who tells you, I don't watch news, you need to actually call that particular person an illiterate person. For the simple reason that it doesn't matter however educated you are. If you are not in touch with current affairs and what is happening in your own societies, the difference between you and a person who does not know how to read is zero. Okay. Yeah.
As we come to the end of this conversation, there's one more issue I want us to discuss, and this is the issue of heckling at the president's events. Yeah. It has generated quite some debate, especially after that declaration by the CS of Interior, Kithure Kindiki, that he'd be seeking arrest of people who are engaging in such. As we speak, 2 people have so far been arrested and others are being sought. The question is this the way to go? There's the whole argument of freedom of speech.
I do not think, of course, the reporting goes to the level of heckling. Heckling in law is not, of course, an offense. There is no, in the penal code, there is no crime such as heckling. But of course, heckling, organized, speaks to a certain thing in the penal code. When you are threatening peace. So the people who plan this, there's a heckling industry that has actually come to fore, where I have got a problem with you. If we are colleagues at work, I have got a problem with you. On the day when the management shows up, you bring in chaos so that then we are settling our scores in the presence of management and leadership. Why haven't we done that before that particular day? So continuously there is this rise of bad manners where people want to settle their scores before the president. And even as that moves on, we are bringing in impunity and anarchy that should not be supported. So all the people who plan, so long as you have organized and you are financing it, if it's organic, you would understand. But all of us looking at it, you realize you are not heckling at the president. You wait until the governor speaks up and then you start shouting at the governor. Then you do not, and then the governor also has got his own group shouting down.
Isn't this therefore an issue that should be dealt with at the political party level? And yes, you speak for the
political party level?
Yes, because this is a political party indiscipline. Most of these are speaking in UDA strongholds.
Some of
it's
those people.
It's in Kiambu, it's in Bomet. This is UDA stronghold.
Look at this. Some of those things are organized by people who are not even registered members of the party. They could be our supporters. But then the party does not have such overreach that you are going to go down and tell your members, these you cannot do.
Are you saying this is not an instance of a political party indiscipline?
These
members indiscipline within a political party?
The membership. Actually, eventually, of course, I think I'll raise it with the party so that then if we find any of our members heckling the party leader, for example.
For example, in Kiambu, the person who was heckled, and it was either between the current governor of Kiambu, Kimani Wamatangi, who's a UDA member, and the current MP Thika Town, who's also a UDA member, and the heckling was between them and their supporters. This is just within UDA party.
Fred, can I tell you something? In Kakamega, where there is no UDA, there's a lot of drama on that end. There are fights. Sifuna has written a letter.
Not in front of the president.
No, but then, well, the president has not gone to Kakamega yet. He should be there today. He will be in Western today. But this is the point, is that I need to speak to you. The rise of heckling, especially when it comes to governors, speaks to a problem that we have not really addressed. Allow me to actually tell you this. That if a governor does not bring in revolutionary governance tenets, does not bring in innovative ways of bringing in resources, a governor is reduced to two things. Thing one, a governor becomes the manager of pending bills. Thing two, a governor becomes the paymaster general. If they are going to wait for the 15% from the national government, you're only going to wait for that 15% from the national government. You pay taxes, pay a few pending bills. After 3 months, wananchi wanachoka na wewe. So, and that is why I actually now understand the politicians.
Are you suggesting that the heckling then is organic?
I'm telling you, governors now must become innovative. Governors must stop depending. You saw the paper yesterday where even the travel money that counties are spending and their own source revenue, they outstrip it. So, if anyone who wants to become governor does not meet the needs because they overpromise. They actually want to look like presidents when they are campaigning. They overpromise, but then they depend on the 15% from the national government. They are not raising money. There are other counties that have actually done so well. For example, Homa Bay. You realize that look at what they are spending in for travel and their own source revenue. It goes so high up. So the biggest problem, especially with governors, and now I understand the politicians who are shying away from running for governor. They are shying away from running from governor because if you are not going to bring in innovative ideas on how to run the county, if you only depend on the national government contribution and you are not bringing anything new, you become a paymaster general and the manager of pending bills. And, well, you promised so much to Mwananchi.
But then if you say it that way, then it means that this is not an induced case of heckling. It's actually organic. It's real. People are tired.
There's the place of induction here, inducement here. And that being that we have got a phenomenon that has been around for a very long time. Continuous campaign. That the next campaign begins the day after the election.
Isn't the president himself encouraging this, given that it's happening more and more? He has a liberty of intelligence reports. He knows if at all someone is organizing hecklers, surely.
How do you go ahead and micromanage people? What we just need to do is to discourage that by telling them off. And now that the CS is actually taking action. But so far...
Should that be the way to go, to arrest them?
Because you're causing mayhem. In the process of causing mayhem, people have been hurt. Would you, for example, go home and tell your child with an injury on your head that this is political, it's not a crime? Once they do whatever they are doing, it borders on crime, and therefore they should actually be held responsible. Because our political differences should not go far as it's actually gotten. We are not in a campaign period. But people continuously, if you have got a problem with the other person or you are campaigning, you want to show the president that so-and-so is unpopular. So what? That is bad manners. Those political bad manners must actually be reined in. If we allow that to continue, then when we get to elections, it will actually be worse.
And you're still saying it's not a party, it's not a concern?
Well, as a party, I think eventually I will speak to the Secretary General today, and if we find any registered member who actually has booed the party leader or is actually causing this particular problem, then I think it will be important that the party summons those individuals.
So far, the party hasn't taken it up as an issue of concern?
As of now, of course, the heckling was the other day. As a party has got organs, but I'll tell you
the cases in the Mount Kenya region happened almost a month ago.
Some of those people who organize those things are not even people from UDA. Just because we have got a UDA governor does not mean that the hecklers on the ground are from UDA. Okay. And by the way, you realize that some of those goons are ferried. You remember in Kiambu, they were ferried from elsewhere and brought in to actually come and cause problems. So if, as a party, we will actually find out that a member, and we're talking about, and some of them are
that members from other political parties outside Kenya Kwanza.
Because those are presidential events. Any Kenyan is in it. So we as UDA, if we find that our member is actually heckling the party leader, we will actually deal with that particular individual.
Okay.
But you see, presidential events attract everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Arnold Maliba, Strategic Communications Advisor, UDA. Any last word you'd want to add? I'm sure there's something you may want to say.
I'd like just to tell Kenyans this way, that we've come from a very difficult period. No one lesser than the president himself has actually told us that we've actually been in a very difficult situation. But we've patched up places where things were so difficult. We've been able to resuscitate the economy. I want to ask Kenyans to support the administration of William Ruto by paying your taxes, by waking up in the morning and going to work in whatever form you are actually doing, raising your voices and speaking against evil, being a participant in the running or rather in the management of public affairs, but over and above, also participating in the programs we are running. On the housing, please, because you are contributing, apply for the house. Okay. Do not join the bandwagon that is telling people this thing is bad, but other people are applying. There are 46,000 houses that currently are under construction. Okay. We've got over 700 in the pipeline. There are 200 that are at 200,000 that are actually at planning level, almost at takeoff level. But the ones that are already being created or rather being constructed are 46,000. So what am I telling people? Even as you complain, I hope that when you complain and raise concerns, it's about adding value to this particular process. The program is already happening. Ensure that you apply for it so that at least even if you miss it, you will get your money and say, I tried to get a house, but now that I didn't get a house, I'm getting my money. Okay. So apply and get a house. And by the way, finally, I need to say this. It is one person, one house.
Okay.
So you have a chance.
You do have a chance.
And the president said 20,000 shillings. If you earn anything 20,000 shillings and above, you have got a 50% chance already.
Asante sana, Arnold Maliba, Strategic Communication Advisor, UDA Party. Straight to editorial comment this morning. Once again, we are painfully forced to revisit the scourge of road carnage in Kenya. The latest spate of tragic road accidents is something we can no longer ignore. The deaths of 11 Kenyatta University students in a collision near Voi, only hours after another fatal incident in Bomet claimed 5 lives, and yet another involving students from Kapsabet Boys High School days earlier, underscores the gravity of the situation. According to Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki, road traffic accident fatalities surpass even the death toll from the dreadful COVID-19 pandemic. While calls for tougher legislation may echo in the corridors of power, the fundamental issue lies not in the absence of laws, but in the gross negligence and corruption within law enforcement agencies. It is a damning indictment of our society when the loss of life on our roads is primarily due to the deliberate flouting and circumvention of existing laws by those entrusted with their enforcement. The rot of corruption within law enforcement ranks, where officers turn a blind eye to violations in exchange for personal gain, worsens the already dire situation. We must confront this harsh reality head-on and demand accountability from those who have failed in the duty to uphold the law and protect the lives of citizens. Furthermore, beyond mere rhetoric, concrete steps must be taken to enhance road